Today, we have a very exciting and informative session for you today. Our press secretary has a number of announcements from the Prime Minister that I know that you guys are excited to hear. So without further delay, I will invite our press secretary, Mr. Clint Watson.
Thank you, Julian. Good morning, colleagues. All of you joining us, welcome again to another weekly press conference here at the Office of the Prime Minister. We welcome you. Happy holidays to all of you. We've got quite a bit to accomplish. I know this is the holidays. No one wants to stay anywhere long. So it is our endeavor to try and get you out even before the 1 hour expires. And we'll see how well that goes this morning. But as you know, one of the biggest thrusts of the Davis administration is to obviously get schools reopened face-to-face, and we've decided that we will begin that process through a hybrid model, which will have students attending face-to-face for a few days, online for the other days, until we're able to fully integrate. Last night there would have been a national town hall meeting to talk about that, take questions from all of the stakeholders to make sure people understand just how we're going to do that. A very successful town hall meeting. And this morning we want to invite the Minister of Education to come and talk a little more about the opening of school and take any questions you may have surrounding that. So I'm going to invite Minister Glenys Hanna-Martin to come now and just speak to you briefly and take your questions regarding the reopening of school, the hybrid model come January.
Good morning, members of the press. Good morning, my beautiful Bahamian people. As was indicated, we had a town meeting yesterday evening, last night, and to deal with this issue of children going back into the schools on a hybrid model. As many will know, we have been going through a very, very challenging and difficult time in this pandemic. It has particularly challenged education in this country. I don't think I need to sell the meaning of education to our people. Education is, as I said last night, the cornerstone of our progress as a people. It's very important that we ensure that our children are given the best opportunity possible when they go through that education experience, not just to learn some facts, but to stimulate the innate potential of who they are as humans, because that is how they produce and that is how they manifest in this nation, and we all benefit from it. This has been peculiarly challenging for children in school, particularly with the fully virtual mode. Many children have not been able to get online, and we have to be honest about that. It doesn't make sense us pretending this has not been happening in our country. Thousands of children have not been in school for 2 years. This is a crisis, and I've been reiterating this, and I've been putting it on the table only because I need us to understand this is not an issue that is solely that in the hands of the Ministry of Education, but it is one that every single stakeholder must participate in. The parents, the teachers, the ministry, the church, the community, civil society, everyone, all hands on deck. I just wanted to give a little outline of the issues that we are seeking to address, understanding this challenge. We intend, once the children return to school on the 11th of January, to engage in diagnostics, to see exactly where that child is positioned in this fully virtual environment, which has been so challenging. Once we have done those diagnostics, we will get an understanding of where exactly the child is and the extent of learning loss, if any. It might be severe, it might be minimal. We don't know. But we intend to ensure that no child is left behind. So far as humanly possible, we want to ensure that we look individually at each child and seek to meet the needs of that child. And out of that diagnostics, where there is the necessity for remediation, we will engage in that is appropriate to that child. Now, we have had a phenomenon of at least 2 graduation years, what should have been graduation years last year and this year, where children have just not been online. They've been out of school. So I think we can call them dropouts from the virtual reality and from school. And so we have to also target that category of young person, probably around 16, 17, to see how we can bring them back into the fold and try and remediate that loss, because, we don't know for sure what the manifestation of this learning loss will be if we do not do our best to counter it. The research at UNESCO and other places are saying that it could be catastrophic and we could lose a generation. I don't want to use that kind of language because I don't want to, like we say in the Bahamas, I ain't gonna speak that. We're going to do all that we can to ensure that we do what is necessary to ensure that during this period of the pandemic, that our children are able to catch up. One of the concerns is how will face-to-face unfold, and how can we assure safety? I want to say that we are completely guided by the Ministry of Health. It's the reason why we haven't been able to go to hybrid until now. We are completely guided by Ministry of Health. We have we have engaged our stakeholders, which include the representative unions for teachers, the Bahamas Public Services Union, the managers union who represent principals. We've been speaking at the Ministry of Health. They are aware of the protocols that a handbook has been created. We will ensure that the protocols are enforced and facilitated, and we will do all that we can to ensure safety. As was pointed out last night, they're going to keep children in what they call cohorts, so that there is some level of segregation appropriate to the school grade, so that it minimizes any sort of interaction that might counter our efforts. We're also encouraging, where we can, ventilation. We're encouraging outdoors where that's possible, so that you're in the open air and you minimize the issue of any risk. We also intend to support, where we can, all of the parents who feel challenged during this period. And I want to say to parents who are, maybe silent in the process and worried, lean on us. That's why we are here. We will work with you. We will support you. Your child, which is your interest, is our interest. And so just reach out to us, and we will do all that we can to ensure that your household, your family, your circle receives the support that they deserve. And so and then there's the issue of special education. We didn't get to speak about that last night, but children with special needs have not been forgotten, and they will also be carefully addressed during this process of diagnostics, etc. Now we're going into hybrid, which means that we will be in face-to-face for a limited period, for a couple days of the week, and then we'll be back in the virtual. The virtual has been challenging for thousands, and that won't change because we're going into hybrid. So we have to find a way to ensure that children who have been challenged with the virtual, that we are able to support and take them out of that mode where they are unable to access education. I've spoken repeatedly, but I want to say again, we engage the Department of Statistics. They're doing a survey to ascertain what are the reasons children have not been online, and it's thousands. What are the reasons? Is it internet access? Is it parental support? Is it health issues? What are the reasons? We're now being told I will get the results and analysis of that on Monday. That will form the basis of how we will be able to help children who have not been able to get online or have not gone online in the last 2 years. We're going to go after them. So I just want to say that the Ministry of Education, this is going to be a very difficult, tough time, and a lot of hard work, all hands on deck. It will not be easy. It's very challenging, and it is not a small matter, and I don't think anyone should minimize it down the list of priorities. This is the priority, and the health is a serious priority, health education, because this determines the future of our people. And we are being told that if we don't get on top of this, we will reap the results of something very dysfunctional. That cannot happen. And so I just want to express to the Bahamian people my full energy, support, focus, attention, the resources of the ministry, the resources of the government. The Prime Minister himself on the school repairs has come to the table and thrown his weight behind the work that has to be done. You'll go now and see, for example, Sybil Strawn Primary, which if you saw it, you'd think I ain't gonna be ready for about a year. But the work has been accelerated. They're working day and night. And we are aiming to open every single school in this country come 11th of January. And so I just end by saying that let us come together, let us work together. We're trying to build a nation. We're trying to support our children. We want our children. Every parent wants the best for their child. And the Ministry of Education wants the best for that parent's child. But we need to work together. You can't go to sleep on it. You can't be missing in action. You can't be too overwhelmed. And you could be if you feel that way, but reach out to us. We must work together. Thank you very much.
Minister, you note that the schools will reopen January 11th, but right now we see this new variant, which some news reports indicate that every 3 days cases seem to double. Is there any concern with this new variant threatening the reopening of schools next month?
Well, we are completely guided by the Ministry of Health, and they have not. I think the question was asked last night, and the ministry. I think he indicated at this time there is not a concern. This is a work in progress. I'll be honest with you. I would hate for anything to interfere with these children getting back to face. It's their future. It's the hope of their humanity going forward. So I want to urge everyone. Let's try stay safe. If you ain't gonna do it for yourself, do it for these children. Let these children get back in school. But I don't have a concern now because it's not a concern that's been expressed to us. We're moving full speed ahead to open the schools.
Minister, I know with piggyback off of Jasper's question, with the carnival not being able to operate due to concerns that children aren't able to take the vaccine and spread among children who are healthy carriers, I guess what's the rationale now for school reopening when it'll be the same thing, children congregating on playgrounds and with
Right.
each other?
No, the school is a controlled environment with protocols mandated by the Ministry of Health, so it ain't a carnival. So there's no, we're not concerned about that. This is a disciplined, controlled environment, and we are expecting that we will be able to maintain a safe environment. So I don't think that there is a corollary with the carnival, because I think that I feel quite confident that all the stakeholders understand the seriousness of this opportunity, and that we will do all we can to ensure it's a safe environment. Our children got to learn. They have to learn. Their brains got to be stimulated. Their spirits have to be stimulated. We've had 2 years where thousands have not been in school. We don't see it now. It's invisible. But there's a time when it will come and we might see something, and we don't want to see that. We want to give the children this opportunity. So I believe that everyone understands how important it is to maintain a safe campus in every single school.
Will the national exams start on time this academic year?
I think that is the objective, but I heard last night that they're not even saying you need to wear uniforms. So we need to see how it goes, but we have to be careful that we do not compromise those children who have been online, who have been attending, who want to go off to university. So we'll have a lot of channels of things happening, and so we have to be able to ensure that we do not allow those children to be sacrificed to other concerns. And so from what I'm understanding now, the exams will be on time, but we have to see exactly how this will manifest. But it's very important that the children who've been, right there, that they are able to get the full credit for where they are. At the same time, we have those who have not been right there. And so we have to ensure that we do justice with those also. So that's hybrid. We got this hybrid situation now, and we're moving on all channels. But from what I have been informed by our technical people, it is the intent that exams be held on time next year.
You talked about remediation, and you talked about going after people who had graduated over the last couple
Right.
of years and bringing them back into the fold some way. We know the teachers are very often stretched thin. Have you all begun to give consideration to what kind of resources are going to be needed to operate on all these different fronts?
You mean in terms of, when you say resources for who? For the children?
For the children, or just the system in general?
Well, it is going to be resource strained, but it has to happen. We do have agencies though, like the BTVI, like National Training Agency. So we do have avenues. The question is, how do we facilitate those avenues for this purpose? So I think that that's the good news, that we do have avenues that we can rely on instantly to begin to, and they probably have to create special programs. But it's necessity is the mother of invention, and that is how we're viewing it. What needs to be done has to be done. It's just simple as that,
I know free testing was a campaign promise for the Davis administration. Will be set up, will the Ministry of Health maybe consider setting up free rapid antigen testing on school sites to monitor if there are any cases among students?
Well, I don't want to speak for the Ministry of Health, but I know that's something that has been discussed, but I do not believe that there is an intent to do testing for children as they come in, but whether as a protocol, as an added protocol in the way forward, we'll have to see whether they would intend to do that. We'll have to see.
Now, Minister, usually there's some, I wouldn't say pushbacks, but concerns from the Bahamas Union of Teachers. Have you spoken with them? Are they on board with the reopening of schools on January 11th?
They're on board. The union has concern about a number of issues. But I think that one thing we're on the same page on is the welfare of these children. And yes, we have discussed with them the date of school opening, the day teachers go back, the protocols. There's been a meeting with the Ministry of Health and the Bahamas Union of Teachers and other unions and the ministry. They've raised their questions. And so yes, we have tried as far as possible to have wide consultation, complete buy-in on this one objective. And I have not seen anything which suggests that we're not on the same page on this one objective, is to get our children back on January 11th.
Minister Hanna, you mentioned BTVI. What's being done for some of the older people who have been, let's say, sidelined during this pandemic to go back and reskill and upskill themselves?
No one's going to be sidelined. BTVI is BTVI, but it's a vehicle. And so we need to use that vehicle for these children, these young people. Then we will find, we'll find a niche that will allow us to bring the focus that's required for these young people. It might not be singly BTVI, it might be other methodologies, night classes. We have to see what is it that's required. It's a huge task. It's immense, but we want to use what we have and do what we have to as far as possible ensure that children who have been disadvantaged by this whole process are able to be given an opportunity to catch up and to get back on track. That's very important, to get them back on track so that when they have their own lives, their own reality, that it is some qualitative sense of being in their lives. That's very, very important. And the one thing we don't want is children who've not been in school for 2 years, who've been, I guess, wandering around. I don't know. The survey will tell us that. For them to be in no man's land, that's not a good place. And so we have to reach out and embrace and help these children get back on track.
Minister, are you anticipating how this situation of the last 2 years may affect promotion of students? A ninth grader, for example, who hasn't been in school for 2 years and getting ready for national exams and to graduate and move on.
The question is whether I have...
You're anticipating how this may affect promotion or how the ministry will deal with it in general?
You mean going to the next grade?
Yes, going to the next grade level.
I think that's going to be something that has to be looked at. I don't think it, I've not been in a room where there's been a determination, but I cannot see you pushing children through a system who are, not really, because in fact, that must be terribly frustrating for a child to go more and more into environments and where they're still trying to catch up from yesterday. So I think that the important thing is to get them back on track. I think that will be the focus, and I don't know how it will manifest, if it means pulling them out to do that and then putting them back in. I don't know how it will be done depending on the extent of learning loss. I was told by someone, they said, listen, Bahamian children are resilient. And I believe that's true. So I am praying it's not the worst case scenario, but I'm prepared that if it is, that we do what we have to do to ensure not one of our children is left behind. We have to commit to that as a Bahamian people. No child left behind. Particularly if they come from communities that are very challenged, they must have the attention and the focus to ensure that an opportunity is given to those children.
All right. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive update. And again, it's a partnership, right? While the government is doing what it must to make sure our kids get back in school, we need the partnership of the community, of family, relatives, parents, all helping our students to do what they can to get back on track and to be able to get their learning going again. And I believe, like Keisha said, some very good questions there about ensuring that our kids aren't left behind and that they're able to be measured. Thank you again, Minister, for coming and updating us. And remember, school begins on January 11th, 2022. All right, so make sure you know when your kids are expected to go to school. They're color coordinated, color coded, so that you know which days they should be in school and which days they should be in school at home. All right, there's no in school and then off for 3 days. You're in school at home or you're in school at the classroom. Okay, I want to move on to another area. We want to make an announcement today, give you some information on something. This is coming from the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Finance concerning the findings of an audit into the internal controls and operational review of the Bahamas Public Parks and Public Beaches Authority. Introducing the debate in Parliament on the supplementary budget, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Philip Davis, referred to the extraordinary spending record of the Public Parks and Public Beaches Authority over the past 2.5 years. From July 2019 to July 2020, the authority's budget for awarding contracts was $19.1 million. However, the authority actually spent $25.9 million of the Bahamian people's money on contracts, an overspend of $6.8 million, slightly more than 35% above amounts approved in the budget. From July 2020 to June 2021, the authority's expenditure skyrocketed. They were granted a budget of $15.2 million, but in fact spent $28.9 million. An overspend of $13.7 million on an astonishing 90% higher than the budgeted amount. Their budget for this year, from July 2021 to June 2022, was $15.2 million. By October 31st, just 4 months into the financial year, the authority had already spent $9.3 million. Had they continued spending money on contracts at this rate, they will have spent $27.9 million, an overspend of $12.7 million, amounting to more than 83% above the budgeted allocation. Given the 3 years of massive overspend on contracts, the New Day administration commissioned a leading accounting firm to conduct an audit of the authority's finances, particularly in respect to the authority's internal controls and operations. You remember when we first started our press briefings, we told you an audit will be conducted. We received the auditor's report yesterday. Their findings were so jaw-dropping that we decided to immediately release the full report so that the Bahamian people can see for themselves how their money has been spent by just one single authority during the former administration. Copies will be made available to the media immediately after this press conference, and the full report will be published on the website of the Ministry of Finance. Other investigations are underway in other ministries and agencies. We do not wish to prejudice any of those exercises, so we will comment no further on that particular exercise. In the executive summary, the auditors say, quote, "We did not identify the exact need for extra budgetary allocations, and there is speculation that it was fueled more by the demand and requests for economic stimulation than by any real needs on the ground." In other words, contracts were awarded not because there was a genuine need for the work to be done, as required under the Act of Parliament, which created the authority in 2014, but for some other reason. Let's look at the auditor's observations. In their report, the auditors make a series of observations, some of which I will now highlight for you. There were 3 different sets of signatures on contracts, all of which purported to be that of the executive chairman, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Member of Parliament. It is not just a case of someone having a wide range of handwriting. There are 3 consistently different set of signatures on contracts. If they were all written by the same person, how on earth did they remember which signature to use on which contract? Without having had them examined by experts, to the casual observer, it appears that the chairman's signature was signed by 3 different people. If this is the case, it raises a question of who were these people and how did they come to be in position to sign those contracts. Some contracts were also signed and dated by the authority ahead of the vendor and or the witness signing it. This is extremely unusual and very poor practice, as anyone could then sign claiming to be the vendor or witness with no one having any idea if they indeed were the right person. Some contracts are missing, even though monies have been paid. Some contracts were not witnessed, which is a commonly known legal requirement. The authority did not require the official Know Your Customer, KYC, identification taken from vendors to be placed on files, for example, driver's license, NIB cards, passport, in order to compare a vendor's signature. These forms of ID are standard information at a minimum establishment that the authority is dealing with a proper person. This could also raise questions as to compliance with various financial service laws and regulation. Multiple contracts have been issued to individuals using different company names. These individuals have anywhere from 1 to 10 contracts, some of them totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, let's talk about extraordinary contracts. Some of the contracts awarded also have eye-watering terms. At the height of the pandemic, when the whole country was locked down and Bahamians were not allowed to visit parks or beaches, the authority awarded contracts and increased expenditure on contracts to clean those parks and beaches that were closed. Contracts were awarded to sweep roads at a time when people weren't allowed to be on the roads, with some people fined for selling coconuts on the side of the road. One road sweeper was paid $17,000 to sweep roads just 3 times a month, using an electric sweeper. This particular contract paid the contractor $775 per mile. Again, given that the country was in full lockdown, it is unclear whether the contractor was allowed out of their home twice a month in order to fulfill the contract. The records show the contracts had 2 additional road sweeping contracts, with their combined yearly compensation was $552,000. This was at a time when the Bahamian people were being told that money was too tight to offer decent support for food and housing. How has this situation been allowed to happen, you may ask? The most obvious reason is the complete lack of oversight by the board. The board consists of 10 directors, but during the 15-month period under review from July 2020 to September 2021, the board only attempted to meet once via Zoom in December of 2020. However, there are no minutes or any other record of that meeting, so it is unclear whether the meeting was actually held or what was discussed or agreed. There was also no monthly reporting by the managing director to the board on the authority's financial performance. This lack of basic oversight is in direct breach of the board's statutory duty to manage the financial resources and assets of the authority. We note that just after the election in 2017, both the permanent secretary and the financial officer were transferred out of the authority and replaced by people who had never held management posts before, let alone senior posts carrying such weighty financial responsibilities. As the auditors note, quote, the entire accounts department consists of 1 senior accountant who, while diligent at the post, does not hold professional qualifications. The size and complexity of the authority's average annual expenditure require a highly skilled accounting department with expertise in financial control and compliance to ensure proper financial management, end quote. The staffing decisions ensured that this was not the case. Given that the authority spent some $64.1 million on contracts from July 2019 to October 2021 alone, it defies belief that the financial management was so weak and that the chairman could issue so many contracts without any challenge from or even mere oversight by the board. Here are some shocking conclusions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that at the very least, there was a culture of reckless disregard at the authority. There was no attempt to implement or exercise effective controls. There was no attempt to document why there was a need to engage in such excessive spending. Instead, a select group of people operating under different identities received multiple contracts and paid huge amounts of taxpayers' money to carry out work which was at best unnecessary, at worst not carried out at all. The way forward. Going forward from today, the authority has decided to terminate all current contracts and to do so in a legal manner. There is no presumption of guilt or wrongdoing on the part of any contractor. I'll say it again. There is no presumption of guilt or wrongdoing on the part of any contractor. Every contractor who has a valid legal contract will be paid. I repeat, every contractor will be paid. However, they will now be paid in a way that fully complies with all existing laws, regulations, and best financial and accounting practice. Given that there is no information on file related to the Know Your Customer requirements, every contractor will be required to attend in person at a venue to be announced shortly and provide the basic KYC documentation for the maintenance of proper internal records of the authority. They will have to produce a document or documents to prove their identity, such as a passport, driver's license, or NIB card. They will have to confirm their bank details, and they will have to be tax and NIB compliant as the law requires. And of course, joining me today is the executive chairman of the board. I'm going to invite him to come and take any questions that you may have, as he's been very instrumental and very involved in this process. So coming now is the executive chairman of the Bahamas Public Parks and Public Beaches Authority, Mr. Mikel Bonamy, who will take any questions you may have regarding our statement this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to take some questions regarding the statement made by Clint.
Yes, I
Mr.
gather
Bonamy, does
from the,
anything in the audit or any of the revelations rise to the level where you all feel a need to involve the police or the director of public prosecution?
Right. What we are doing now is going through the report. The report will be laid before the board. The board will make some decisions, and some instructions will be carried out as a result of our meeting. And so we're working around the clock, but we don't want to get ahead of any investigations, as Clint said in his statement. And so that's something that we're going to consider.
I gathered from the final part of Clint's statement, when he talked about NIB compliance, KYC, et cetera, that many of the persons who held those contracts didn't fall into that category. Can you say to what extent at this point?
It is extremely widespread. We would say in the 90th percentile. And so it is very high. It has been jaw-dropping, as he would have said. And so we understand that we're dealing with Bahamians' livelihoods. As Clint said, we're not looking at attacking the vendors. We're looking at providing solutions to the problem. My team and I have been working throughout the night to try and solve this, and I think this is the best that can be devised in the circumstances.
So for the record, are you all saying that the audit found that people received contracts worth thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in some cases? 90% of them did not prove, one, who they are, or two, that they have a viable business.
Well, based on our investigations, as I took the office, one of the things we wanted to find out is how do we get in contact with the individuals that have contracts with the authority? I would have spoken to individuals at parks and beaches, and they were not able to produce the required documentation, and so that was also a red flag. For instance, if we would like to terminate a contract, we need to be able to provide notice. We need an address, we need information, and some of those things are lacking, and we don't have it.
Did the audit get a response from the actual former executive chairman?
I can't speak to that, not to my knowledge, however.
Do you think there needs to be an investigation into this?
Well, we will be led by the facts. I need to go over the report again. There is a number of investigations. I'm not sure whether you're referring, what type of investigation you're referring to, but all cards are on the table.
With the cancellation of the contracts now, is there some contingency plan in place to, I guess, immediately fill the voids that now, I guess, the roles that these contractors would have once done?
That's a very good question. We have 300 general service workers who we've already put on notice that they would have to ramp up during the process. We believe, however, that by sometime mid-January, we should be able to right-size the ship, and we should be able to have our workers going back to their normal task and have the contracted vendors doing the work.
How many contracts were canceled? What was the value of?
I would say we are currently at a run rate, and when I say run rate, what we're paying on a monthly basis, we are paying approximately $2.7 million. I want to put that into context for you. The annual budget is $15.2 million. The authority has spent that $15.2 million when we do the payout for October, November, and December. That's it. We're beyond. We're into the range of about $16 million. And so we're looking at approximately, to answer your question, 1,400, between 1,200 and 1,400 contractors. And so we're oversubscribed. And so one of the things we wanted the Bahamian people to understand is that it's not a political process, and this is why I made the case that we need to pay everyone. As long as they can prove that they have a valid contract and that the work was carried out, they will be paid.
In light of
And well, I would like to say this as well. We cannot continue at $2.7 million per month. What we would like to do is align the authority with the original $15.2 million annual budget. And so what that means is the authority, we had to take extraordinary action to refund the authority. The previous administration has the authority to a point where it's absolutely out of money. And so we weren't holding back for any political reasons, but we have to make sure that we do everything within the four corners of the law.
In any instances where you find that monies were paid and contractors didn't perform the work, will they be required to pay the money back?
What we're doing is we're going to set up a subcommittee from the board. The board is actively working now. I was intending to have an emergency meeting again with the board so that we can look at the way forward and set up subcommittees so that we can address the number of issues that is arising as a result of the report that was just released yesterday.
in light of the investigation and everything that came out, can we anticipate the authority having, I guess, new best practice policy to prevent situations like this from moving forward?
Yes, we are. Across the board in every single department. We are going to set up SOPs, standard operating procedures that have to be done. This chairman is working around the clock to make sure that we get it done. We know that Bahamian people have to get value for their money. We take this job very seriously. We understand what took place, and I'm doing my best to not politicize it, but to fix it, and that's what we're doing.
I have a question for Mr. Watson. Has the Prime Minister looked at this audit, and if so, what are his thoughts on it?
Sure. Any other questions for the chairman before I respond?
All right, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jasper, to answer your question, the Prime Minister has been made aware of the audit. He has given certain directions as a Minister of Finance. We're not privy to discuss it because, of course, as you heard Mr. Bonnaby say, he has to inform his board first of those instructions. I don't want the instructions to be heard on national airways and the board has not met. But he has given them instructions. And once they would have been informed of that, we're able to come back and say to you what the Prime Minister's response is in regard to that. All right. I want to go through a couple of announcements, and then we take your questions. Remember, I promised you we're going to try and get you out here early, and I'm not doing a good job of it right now because we're almost at our time. So let's quickly go through a couple of things that I think you need to have. The Prime Minister would like you to be quite aware of. And of course, remember, you would have remembered at the beginning the announcement of a $500 payout for those who were receiving unemployment benefit. We're pleased to report that took place yesterday. Persons would have received their $500 stimulus gift in time for Christmas as promised. Now, let's clarify some of that because I know a lot of you had questions regarding that. This gift obviously is for persons who were receiving $100 to $200 payment. So those are the people who would have been on the lower end of the scale receiving that unemployment payment. Not everyone. So that stimulus package was for them, as we outlined. Secondly, I know some people called may have called you and said, oh, I didn't get mine. There are some people who were made redundant from their companies in between that period of being promised. So it is important to understand that to qualify, you would have to have been on that unemployment list of benefits for assistance as of the 9th of December. It goes up to the 9th of December. So anybody who was on that list up to the 9th of December would have qualified. That means some persons from some of the larger properties, for example, like Atlantis, some of them who were made redundant would not have received this benefit. Here's why. When they would have received their payout from their employer, they would have received a 6-month payout. That means your national insurance would have been paid up for 6 months, which would have still listed you as being employed and receiving a benefit. So that's why they would not have qualified for this unemployment stimulus. Now, what many may do is when that period runs out, perhaps by January, they may go and apply for the NIB unemployment benefit, which is separate and aside from the government assistance program, which they can perhaps qualify for having lost their job. And so I want to make that clear to people so they know where they can go to get further assistance. The unemployment government program that's been in place for the pandemic, that is expired. Remember, it was extended. It expires at the end of December, and a determination will have to be made by government whether it will be renewed or expanded even further. So I wanted to clarify so that people who do not get the benefit and may have fallen into one of those categories may have clarity on why they wouldn't have received that. But as for the payment, it was made. Prime Minister on Monday participated in Diplomatic Week, Diplomatic Day since 2017. We haven't had one. One was held on Monday. The event hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was under the theme, Working Together Towards a Sustainable and Smart Future. Prime Minister Davis said, although the government is still a few days shy of its first 100 days in office, it has worked tirelessly to bring hope back to the Bahamian people. He said there is a world of opportunity and potential for wealth creation with the expansion of the blue and green economies, as well as a world of possibility for job creation in the technical area. He encouraged diplomats to always find what is the best thing to do, what they can do for the people, and how they can move beyond talk into action. Prime Minister Davis said the Bahamas recommits to full and active participation in international affairs and to facilitating real action to help rebuild trust among the Bahamian people. Attendees heard from panelists on climate change, health, economic affairs, agriculture, technology, innovation, and a whole lot more. Panelists included Dr. Nakia Forbes, Dr. Rihanna Neely, Ms. Elise Delaney, Ms. Brickell Pinder, Ms. Somaya Cargill, Ms. Davinia Bain, and Ms. Jerry Kelly. Also, want to pass on to you, there's been parliamentary training going on this week at Breezes, a 3-day training workshop for all members of Parliament, including Senate and the House of Assembly. It's being hosted by the Commonwealth Parliament Association. This conference, which was held from Wednesday through to today, was aimed at better equipping parliamentarians in their roles. Prime Minister Davis, in the opening, outlined 5 points parliamentarians should aim at: their good representation for constituents, the principle of honor in public and private life, a recognition that the honor bestowed on them is a privilege, which leads to the fourth thing, and that is a commitment to being prepared, and finally, always working as a team. And then, of course, you would have seen the celebrations from Miss Bahamas Universe and her successful achievements of making history in the Bahamas by becoming the first woman to make the top 10 at Miss Universe. And the celebrations were there. Prime Minister was among the first to congratulate on the night of the pageant, Miss Bahamas Universe, on her performance and the Miss Universe pageant. He noted that as a mentor, advocate for children's education, and most notably her achievement in advancing to the top 10, made her a role model and inspiration for all Bahamian to strive for excellence. We congratulate Chantel on her outstanding achievement. The Prime Minister also met yesterday with the President, Vice President, Director of Projects at the Caribbean Development Bank. They came to pay a courtesy call. In attendance, as I said, was CBB President Dr. Hagines Jean Leon, Vice President of Operations Isaac Solomon, Director of Projects Daniel Bess. President Leon was just elected in March and thanked the Bahamas for its support over the years. Dr. Leon said he is committed to working closer with the Bahamas to formulate a stronger, more efficient relationship. He said that by the end of his tenure, he hopes that the bank and the Bahamas has an excellent working relationship, one where the bank is the first point of contact for conversation, advice, and the likes. Dr. Leon committed to helping the Bahamas fight climate change, as he says no country should be left behind. And as you know, sports tourism is back in full swing. Today, the Bahama Bowl takes place at the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium, National Stadium. That's going on beginning at noon today, and it's absolutely free. So if you want to go and have some fun, you are invited to go free of charge for the Bahama Bowl. That completes our announcements. If you do have questions left, I'll take those from you. We can begin with Yuri Kemp from the Tribune Business. Hi, Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Thank you. Well, 4 questions. The first one is, what's happening with the Ministry of Natural Resources? I haven't heard anything from them since they've been constituted.
Good question. And what's been happening at the Ministry of Natural Resources, they've been going through an assessment process. And the assessment of natural resources. And what they're trying to do is to determine what can be quantified for economic benefits, through the Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's important. Before they can speak, before they can talk publicly about what's going on, they need to assess what do we have in our resources, what can be monetized, what can provide economic benefits for the Bahamian people. They want to get all the ducks in a row, what needs legislation, what needs policy, so they can put in what we can benefit from, what are the conditions that need to be in place to maximize for the Bahamian people. So that's what's going on right now, and then you're going to be hearing more of them once that assessment is complete. As we turn the corner to a new year, you're going to start seeing them become more visible and talk about being able to actually do and achieve benefits from the natural resources. So that's what's been happening there.
Are they getting technical cooperation from the IDB or the CDP or those other agencies?
They are getting technical cooperation from other agencies. I can't name who they are right now. I'm not sure. We can get back to you on that, but they are getting assistance, advice, particularly from not just those agencies, but others as well that we've never engaged before, now that we're putting a considerable focus on natural resources. So yes, they're doing a lot of that as well.
Okay, the second question, what about the private sector placement of the 52-week hires that Minister Pia Glover said a few
Yeah.
minutes ago?
I'm glad you asked about that because we haven't talked about that in a while. There's been a lot of interest about being able to place persons in the private sector. So far, there's been about 50 to 60 persons who've been placed. Now, the program started out very aggressive, Yuri. It started out a lot of interest, and it's slowed down. It's much slower now. Here is a challenge we've arrived to. Most of the persons that could have easily been placed have been placed. Those are the 50 to 60 persons. Those that remain, the challenge is because they lack skills, it's hard to place them in the private sector. And that's why it's slowed down significantly, because those who perhaps the private sector could have used, who may have had special skills, have been absorbed. But then now those who remain that don't have those skills, it's hard to place them. So what's being done now is trying to see how we can give some practical skills to those who are still looking for placement, so it makes it easier to be placed. But it's been a lot of interest from the private sector. Challenge is we've not been able to supply them with the kind of skilled laborers they're looking for.
So can you say again how many people were actually placed?
About 50 to 60.
50 to 60 out of how many? 80?
I don't know how much were there to be placed. I can get that number for you. I can just tell you how much have been placed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last question. What about the review of the hedging process at BPL? Are they still undergoing their review?
Yes, they're still in BPL. They're a work in progress. We've not gotten an update since they've started, but they are still in BPL working through that process. So hopefully we'll get an update soon on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Yuri. All right, let's move on to, who's my second person on my list? Matthew Moxie from Eyewitness News. Hey, Matthew.
So my first question is there any update on the Hurricane Dorian pledges made under the previous administration?
None yet, and we would remember we would have said previously that we were looking through these donations and pledges to see who has been made good on, who can't do it, who's still doing it. That assessment is going on. It's more aggressive now. The chairman is in place, the board is now in place at the DRA, and so they're working through looking and seeing who is committed and whether we received it, one category, whether they're still going to make good on it, two categories, and who can still be targeted for assistance. So they're still working through the process. Now that the board in place are more aggressive, that's one of the main things they're looking at now.
Right. And also, is government looking to charge Equinor under the Environmental Act for the impact of the oil spill, as many environmentalists like the Bahamas National Trust have called for them to be held accountable?
I won't speak directly to Equinor right now because we don't want to talk. And whenever you're talking to a company and you're sorting out situations, you don't want to do it in the public domain. But I will say publicly, the policy of the Davis-Cooper administration is to enforce to the letter all laws, particularly environmental laws. That is the position. I won't speak directly to what's happening with Equinor because there are some talks that are taking place regarding that. But just know that the Davis administration is keen on following all environmental laws. Okay? All right. Anybody? Let's go to number 3. That's you, Jasper. You know that. That's why you say, you know it's you. Jasper Ward, Nassau Guardian. Hey, Jasper.
Hey, Quinn. I wanted to know when the board appointments will be completed and released to the public.
Most of them are done. There are maybe a handful of boards that, and many, and I don't want to put any insignificance on the boards, but most of them are boards you probably wouldn't even recognize existed, that we're just trying to tie up. But most of the main boards are complete. Where you see there's not been an announcement yet, there's a couple of things happening there. Either all the persons who were previously in the board have to be removed in the proper way. Either they have to resign, or there has to be some other way to have them removed until waiting for that to happen, or there's somebody who has to be notified and they've not responded as to whether they can accept a board appointment. Those kind of little issues are happening. But for most part, most of the boards have been announced. As you see on a regular basis, the minister responsible for those portfolios are revealing the boards to the public and so on. But there's not discussion now as to a particular board who's going in. All of that has taken place. It's just now a amount of notifications and little technical stuff is going on.
And there's 2 weeks left in the year. We've been asking for weeks. How much did you guys spend at the opening of Parliament?
I'm waiting on that too. Every week I put my request in. I've not gotten a response. I am assured though that it has to come soon because of the closing of books for the quarter. So I think we're very close to finding out.
I feel like you said that in October and November though.
Sorry?
You said that in October and November.
Yes, and we've not gotten the results of those books yet. The quarter would have closed, so we're waiting on the results of those because it'll be in there. So even if I haven't gotten it physically, I can look it up and see it for you. Okay? Sure. Let's go to, who's number 4? Number 4 is Laurencia, JCN. Hey, Laurencia.
Good afternoon. Well, one of my questions were already answered, but another question is saying that we are about to go, kids are about to go back to school. When can we anticipate a tranche of the Pfizer vaccine coming in for those children?
Laurencia, not soon enough. I'll tell you, and talking to Dr. Darville about this, unfortunately, we have no update. We've made a request through the United States and through other agencies, and so have so many other countries. No one has responded yet. We're trying to find ways that we can source this, but as you can imagine, it's in high demand. But we have been constantly in touch with those who we've reached out to see if we can get a tranche of doses for our kids. We've not had any success yet on that. So we're still fighting very heavily to find a source that we can get that from. Okay, thank you. Anything else? That's it? Okay, let's go to Sloan Smith, online eyewitness. Hey.
Hi there, Clint.
Hey,
Happy
Sloan.
Friday.
Happy Friday, Sloan. Go easy on me today.
My first question was already answered. It was
Thank
about
God.
the NIB Christmas
Yes,
bonuses.
yes.
And obviously, my second question is addressing the elephant in the room. Yesterday, you would have advised that Carnival has officially once again been denied. My question as it relates to that is, how does the Davis administration intend to address what may be a fallout from that Carnival denial with Carnival operators, and how does it intend to, strengthen the relationship with the operators moving forward to ensure that they do return next year or the year after that?
Well, a lot of focus has been put on this Carnival operator. I'll tell you this, Sloan, and to all of you colleagues. Understand that what your administration, what your government has done is made a decision that the administration believes is in the best interest of you. And I don't want that to get hidden in all of the discussion about Carnival. The government could have very easily said, no, let them open up, operate. Let's have the Carnival. And then there's an outbreak or a spread, or somebody goes home and passes it on to an elderly person who sadly dies, and then look what the headlines will be. The Carnival cost of death. You'll have some poor mother or some unfortunate family member crying their heart out because if this Carnival had not opened, their loved one would have been alive. There's so many consequences of what could have happened. This was not an easy decision. But in the same vein, it was a no-brainer. Why? Because you, as an administration, always want to make the best decision for your people. We are still, ladies and gentlemen, let me stress this again, we are still in a global pandemic. And while for the last few months it feels like we're not because the administration has been managing it well, does not mean that it's not present. And there is one thing that can start off an outbreak, and we have a catastrophe in our hands. And our healthcare sector will be overwhelmed. And our hospitals, remember all those stories we did on hospitals being overwhelmed and people dying because they could, those stories that you've not seen for months, they will easily return by a wrong decision. And so when you talk about choosing entertainment over protecting people's lives, it's a no-brainer. Sure, we would all like to see the Carnival, an event for the Christmas, but the medical practitioners are saying to us, it is too great a risk this close to trying to reopen school to have that chance. And so you were presented with, do we get our schools open and get our kids back learning? Or do we take a big chance of having school opening delayed because there could be an outbreak of carnival? You can't measure the two on the same level. And so what happens is the administration makes a decision. Now, let me get back to your question. The administration has not faulted. It's within its view and its right to make a decision whether or not it will give someone authorization to operate. There is no agreement that was broken with the government. I want to be very clear on that. There is no agreement that was established with the government. All right? The political party and the government are separate entities. So from the government standpoint, there is nothing the government has to be concerned about backlash or relationships, because the government operates for the best interests of the people. And the government is comfortable that it's done that, and it's made the right decisions, and those who are involved understand that as well.
So you're saying there's a difference between the government and the people?
Sure, let's go to Kyle. Kyle, go ahead. Go ahead. I just want to make sure she was done. Go ahead. You
I
do
wasn't
it.
done, but let Kyle go.
Okay, go ahead.
While we're here on that, you're saying there's a difference, right? So did the PLP sponsor the carnival coming here? Did the PLP know in advance that the carnival will be coming here? And why is this denial now happening while they're already here and set up?
And all that confirmation came in October according to the document that was tabled in the Senate.
Okay.
So October, December.
Two things. I don't want you to see this as a deflection. I cannot speak on behalf of the PLP. I'm the press secretary for the Office of Prime Minister. And to make a statement on behalf of the PLP would be incorrect for me in my role. So I can't speak on the PLP. I do encourage you to talk to the PLP and find out what happened. But it would be improper for me to speak on behalf of the PLP. That's not my job. I know as part of the government, we've done our steps as a part of the government's role. And as part of the government's position in this, we've not made any missteps. The government has done what it's executed to do.
So is there a step-by-step play of how they got certain approvals with different ministries to even get in, set up customs, that kind of stuff, before they even got to the Ministry of Health?
Yes, and that's why I believe I referred you to who you should talk to so that you can get clarity on that.
Have they been given a deadline to dismantle everything and move?
No, not to my knowledge. They've been made informed of the decision yesterday. I can follow up as to whether there's been any set deadlines.
But it's been indicated that they don't actually need the government's permission to operate. They just needed protocols for COVID-19.
And the reality of that is you're in somebody's country, and if the government says you cannot operate because it will provide a risk, the government has the right to stop you from operating. We are a sovereign nation. The government is the head of the Bahamas. No independent operator can just decide they're going to operate if they've been advised by the government. And let me make this clear. There's not been an adversarial discussion. They understand. They understand. And while they may share views on it, they understand, they appreciate it. It's not been adversarial at all.
Is the government concerned about, I guess, a legal pushback from the operators?
No. The government is the government of the Bahamas. We've not erred in our judgment. We've not made any mistake. We don't owe anything to anyone. We are responsible for licensing. We're responsible for giving permission. The government can say yes, or the government can say no. You can't sue the government for that. You can probably try. But the government has a responsibility to operate in the best interest. You may look at other avenues. That's entirely up to you. But this, I want you to understand, colleagues. I think you're looking at the wrong perception. The government had to make a decision as to whether or not it was in the best interest of the Bahamian people for this operation to happen. The government is well within its right to tell a vendor you cannot operate.
And so what were the COVID-19 protocols that were not acceptable to the government? What were those protocols?
You can find out from health officials. Their main concern, while there may have been things put in place to try and shore up, the main concern that health would have said in their press release is because of the new developments of this new strain and the risk it provides to a population that is not vaccinated in the Bahamas, it will be unwise to give consent. So that being said, the concern here is not whether a particular person meets protocols or meets all the requirements. The concern is the risk associated with their activity, which spans some 6 weeks. It's not a one night only. It's a 6-week operation, whether it is in the best interest in a pandemic for the Bahamian people. And the government decided it is too great a risk for its people for 6 weeks to put its people in risk.
With that said, are restrictions being considered, given that these vulnerable youth still do not have vaccines available in the country? Are restrictions being considered for other events that are happening during this holiday season, given the risks of the new Omicron variant?
The Ministry of Health always makes decisions based on what they believe the information put before them is and the science associated with it. You may find one event gets approval, perhaps because it's an adult, perhaps because they have arranged that a person to be vaccinated or to taken a test. All of those are different circumstances. That is different from you dealing with children. It is a very vulnerable population, particularly with the question we just answered now. We still can't source vaccines for them. We can't put them in and risk their education and not being able to reopen because of an entertainment opportunity.
And just for me, was that the toss-up whether or not the country has to decide between Carnival and students going back to school?
It made the conversation very, very clear to us when health officials said, should there be an outbreak, it will delay the opening of school. And when you get that kind of advice from health officials, it almost becomes a no-brainer. We need to get our kids back in school. And anything that can jeopardize that. And that's why you've heard us say, you've heard the Prime Minister when he dropped in on the press conference at the head of the Thanksgiving holiday, say to people, whatever you do, when you travel, when you gather as families, because you're now allowed to gather for the first Christmas in a long time, be responsible about it. Because the carnival is not the only issue. The issue is when you still gather at church, you gather at family dinners, you gather for whatever events that are allowed to happen, you have to exercise the protocols because those can also lead to super spreaders and cause there to be an issue with opening of school. We've been warned by the international and local authorities that there's a possible fourth wave coming. If you've been watching the numbers, even with our daily dashboards, you see that there has been a bit by bit creeping up of the numbers. Those are signs that tell you that you can be facing a fourth wave. And that means you have to exercise all cautions necessary to still operate, but to ensure that we try and keep this pandemic under control in the Bahamas, which we've been doing a very good job of so far. I think that's everybody. Sloan, that was you. Rashad? Yes, Rashad. Yes, Rashad, I think you're the last one.
No, I'm good.
You good? I like you, Rashad. Okay, so let's quickly move to our final segment, which is our highlights on our Bahamian businesses, especially during the holidays. We're happy to have two of those with you now. And after those heavy questions from Kyle and Sloan, I'm sure they're hungry. So let's get to meet our people so that we can talk about their businesses. We have two vendors today, Pastry Haven and Gone Fishing. So I'm going to invite from Gone Fishing, Hamish Moxie. Hamish, did I get it correct? Hamish Moxie, come on up and talk to us about, as you can see, look like he just went fishing. Come on up and talk to us about Gone Fishing. Kyle applaud and he probably hungry.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. Happy holidays to everyone. Gone Fishing is a small, quaint little secret sitting on the Western Esplanade, the Awaki area. We've been there a little over 8.5, going on 9 years, May coming. Specialize in barbecue. We also have evolved over time and became a great seafood place for seafood, doing grilled groupers and lobster and conch and so forth like that. And during the pandemic, we turned it over and started doing breakfast. We do a boiled fish, stew lobster. We also do boiled stew and so forth like that, and we do what they call skin cat or fried Johnny bread, doing the pans. Okay, most of our stuff is cooked off the grills, and our macaroni, our breads, so forth like that. So anytime you get an opportunity to come out and you want some good food, Kyle will tell you, and I'm usually looking for that, something totally different. It's open air, and it's right on the water and everything like that. I encourage Bahamians to come and see what the tourists all around the world is raving about. We've been fortunate to shoot along with Mo Kaysen and National Geographic. We've shot with Katie Lee and a few others, ESPN Extreme Grilling and all that stuff like that. So we've been fortunate enough to travel around doing some barbecue, Lynchburg, Tennessee, Jack Daniel's World Invitationals, and so forth. So get yourself out there sometime during the holidays or through the time, Saturdays and Sundays. Best breakfast you want to have anytime.
What did you bring for us today? Tell us.
Oh, we brought you some of our famous crack conch. It's one of our top sellers, grouper fingers, and we're known for ribs. I can tell you this right now. If you can find somebody that can beat me doing ribs, you bring them on.
Thank you, Hamish. I'm ready to just end this press conference right now and go eat. We got one more. We got dessert for y'all. All right, listen, I can vouch for him, but I'll let him talk about himself. Pastry Haven, everybody's heard of a Pastry Haven. He's becoming one of the leading brands. He is one of the leading brands in the Bahamas. Nathan Sands, come and tell us about Pastry Haven. If you don't know Pastry Haven, those are the people who take cheesecake and make it wonderful. They have every kind of cheesecake. Nathan, tell them about it.
Hi, good day, everybody. My name is Mr. Nathan Sands. I'm a native of Abaco. I actually just moved here about 2 years ago to expand my company. I did have Pastry Haven in Abaco beforehand, but it was just mobile. Now we're here in Nassau, 2 years running, and we're located on Boyd Road in the Mother Gibson Plaza. And as Clint said, we take cheesecake to another level. Now we do all sorts of other pastries, which are special order. You can order wedding cakes, you can order birthday cakes, lemon meringue, pumpkin rolls for the holidays, guava duff, whatever you would like. We do them special order, but anytime you come in the store, you'll be sure to find some assortment of cheesecake. Our bestseller continues to remain the guava duff cheesecake, which is just about everyone's favorite. The close second, she can attest to what I'm saying. The close second probably be the apple pie cheesecake. But what I like to do is take traditional desserts or contemporary desserts and turn it into a cheesecake. So if you're familiar with some other dessert, I could assure you that we have it in a cheesecake form at Pastry Haven. I can assure you of that. We also specialize in duff. We have some of the best guava duff around. So if you haven't visited us as yet, this will probably be a good time during the holidays to come in and place an order with us, and you won't be disappointed.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. So with that, why don't we go and see what's out happening and cooking on the outside, everybody. Colleagues, thank you for being here again. We'll see you right back here next week. Thank you, those joining online.